Hogstye.
Hey guys, I told you about it last week, our partnership with Symbol. Symbol, www.simbull.app, or visit them on our website. There's a banner right at the top of the page. Easy to see. Big bold. Very obvious. Symbol, it's a stock market for sports. You buy, sell, and trade sport teams like you would with stocks. You get payouts every time they win a game. It offers you a new way to invest and profit on your favorite teams without the high fees and the losses of normal gambling. So I went and I started my Symbol account this week, used our promo code, the Hogsty, or I'm sorry, not the Hogsty, it's just Hogsty.
Very if you simple. Click through on the website, it'll automatically
if you do it through our website, like Steve said, it automatically puts that code in there. So I invested, I bought the Washington football team, of course. They are $29 a share, so I got some of that. I'm waiting on a share for the Nationals. I'm trying to lowball it because their price was way too high. But you can put in a bid and say, I'll pay this much. I won't pay that much. So I'm doing that with the Nats just to play with that. If you're a seam head, baseball's there. If you're a football fan, they got football. They have the NBA in there going. So whatever your sport, if you're in the big three, they got it. And they got all the teams.
Yeah, I didn't invest in basketball for reasons that I've stated many times, but I did invest in baseball. Yeah. I thought, the baseball season's about to start. Football isn't starting for a while. Why do football? Worry about that later. So I invested in the Mets and the Cardinals.
Yeah.
For me, it's about let's make money. It's not about, it's like my Dodgers are going to win a lot of games, granted, but they're already expensive. So I bought the teams that are going to improve a lot, which should be the Mets for sure. And then I let my kid talk me into the Cardinals. So
the Mets are always a good one. I noticed the Orioles were probably the cheapest team, which doesn't surprise me because they're the Orioles, but I didn't want to buy that because I still don't think they're going to win enough games to be worth it.
But yeah, you got to have a team that's going to improve and win some games, and their price is going to go up, and the Orioles are just going to suck.
Right, exactly. But that's what the beauty of Symbol is you're buying teams, either you love them or you're buying them for that, making money aspect like Steve talks. That's the whole appeal of this. So go there today, use our promo code like we talked about. Symbol, it's the best way to start getting into sports gambling that's not gambling. That's what I'll say. So with that, let us get into the show, guys. That was more of our freestyle ad, which is cool. So, Steve, you're with me. Jamal, hey, how you doing? We were supposed to have a guest. He no-showed. That's cool. We have a lot to talk about today.
Well, and we'll get the guest back on. I mean, let's not, get the public mad at him.
No. Don't be mad at him.
Yeah, we had to reschedule him, and so he'll be back. OJ was busy this morning, so OJ.
You really need to figure out a new character other than OJ for that bit.
I'm not lying. I mean, it's OJ Simpson. He keeps canceling on us.
Look, one of these days he's going to get things right and realize that he's going to make the right decision.
I don't think there's any day in which OJ will finally get things right.
OJ hasn't had much of a history of making right decisions, but he's going to make it.
Well, he did all those Naked Gun movies. That was a good decision.
Yeah, that's true. That might have been the one thing.
And also being one of the greatest running backs of all time.
That was just a genetic lottery winner. That's not, decision making.
That's fair. All right, guys, let's get into some stuff we didn't talk about last week. So maybe it's a good thing that we, missed this guest because we forgot to talk about some big stories that came up. I want to start with something fun that happened, fun-ish. The team did I don't know, would you call it a press conference, Steve?
No, I wouldn't. I would call it
a fluffer piece.
It was a moderated discussion.
Moderated discussion, about the name change discussion. Jason Wright was on it. The company that they've hired to do this whole name change operation, their head guy was on it. Very hipstery dude with a long beard.
Very hipstery. Yeah,
very hipstery looking.
I was not impressed. Yeah,
Steve was shockingly not impressed with this whole discussion about the name change. And their identity and all that stuff. They didn't reveal much. I'll say that. First off, they did it on this new app that you can only access through an iPhone, which I'm like, why wouldn't you just put it on, YouTube or somewhere broader? But I don't make those decisions.
Well, yeah, it's kind of a hipster thing, the app that we were on.
Very hipster app. Like the logo is like some dude in a weird hat. So
which is why I wasn't impressed.
Yes,
it started off badly.
Yeah,
for that
started
reason.
off badly. They told us we couldn't do it because we don't have iPhones, but Steve and I are both like, we have iPads. It's an app. We can still participate. And but regardless, there were some technical issues. Blah 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 blah. The things. Let's talk about what Jason did reveal about this name change and identity change. The good news first. He did say that they're going to keep the band. You know, there was some talk that they were going to get rid of the team band, and he realized that's a mistake. They're keeping it. They might change their identity a little, obviously, because they got to evolve with what's going on, but there's still going to be a team marching band, which I think is good.
I thought, it's just such a part of the history of the team. I'd hate to see it go, and
Right.
At some point you need to honor the past. I mean, I know we're all about like, oh my God, erase the past, but the band is an integral part of this team's history and was very important, so I'm glad it's back.
Yeah, I'm glad it's back. I mean, you guys remember, we talked about, a month ago or 2 months ago, I even sent an email or a message to Jason, right, about the whole band thing and wanting to get them to get involved with HBCUs. So I thought that was a good idea, and so I'm glad maybe that'll happen if they're keeping the band. Other than that, though, they didn't reveal a lot. They said that they had 15,000 people submit new name ideas and new design ideas, and
I submitted one. You want to hear mine?
Yeah, I know yours. It's to keep Redskins.
My recommendation was Redskins.
Yeah. I limited myself to only 2 submissions, I believe, overall. Never a name, just random uniform ideas I had. So,
you're probably the only one who did that.
No, I doubt I'm the only one who did that. That's
never a name.
Yeah, it's literally just, here's what I think your uniform should look like. I don't care about a logo. That kind of thing. But
yeah, I never really I ain't gonna lie to you, because I have this gut feeling that for whatever reason they already have what it is that they're going to choose, whatever it may be, the uniform, like the uniform design, even though they say they're keeping the colors, but the uniform design or the name, like I feel like I shouldn't. It'll be fun to participate, but I don't think it's going to be worthwhile for me. I just have that gut feeling.
Unless Jason Wright invites me into like a one-on-one or small group meeting, I know that there's not much input that whatever I send would have. So I'm realistic.
I think Jamal's probably right. I mean, I think a lot of in a part of what Jason was talking about in this discussion was the process, how to deal with the fan inputs, and a lot of it was a bunch of marketing mumbo jumbo, which is why Alex was saying I wasn't all that interested, because it was a lot of marketing speak. And
I mean, I'm not I'm not that interested. I hate corporate speak.
Yeah, and it was a lot of that, but the big picture process here that he got across was the team is going to keep open the submission process for another few days. I think it's this week. Is
April 5th.
Like, Tuesday.
So if you have any more, things you want to send to Jason Wright so he can look at them, you have what?
Yeah, get him in quick. But then the team will take some time to narrow down the choices and then arrive kind of at the end. But I think Jamal, you're probably right. I think they actually have an idea of where they're going with it. And they just can't say because you want to have the public feel like they have an input. But I think this is it's akin to Abe Polian holding a citywide, poll about what the name for the Washington Bullets should be, and then choosing a name that nobody asked for.
A name that wasn't in the poll, yeah.
Right. It would not surprise me if that happens again here.
No, look, I think they have this obvious out where they're not doing a poll, and they're saying, we got 15,000 submissions.
Yeah, so somebody's going to name everything, and so in that respect, it's a little easier.
Yeah, and fans are doing their own polls, obviously, through Twitter, through Facebook, I've seen 100 fan polls, and first off, stop putting your own little pet names in there, because they're terrible. Like, just do the polls on the popular names. We know what those are. So,
who was listening in on the conference? Alex knows.
Yeah. Go ahead and mention it.
It was Martin McCauley, who's the guy who owns all these a bunch of trademarks.
Right, he owns like 50 trademarks for different team names. So
yeah,
Yeah, I think he was hoping, am I going to make
him.
money? Am I going to make money?
I spoke to Martin McCauley.
Yeah.
And I wrote a piece about it, and he told me that he did it as a hobby. Which I mean,
okay.
Believe that or not believe it, but that's what he said. So I don't know if I believed it, but that's what he told me.
I kind of lean towards not believing that at this point. That's just me. That's a weird hobby,
yeah,
man.
I mean, well, I could sort of accept it as a hobby a while ago, but why are you still doing it?
Right.
I don't really buy it.
Right. So yeah, not a whole lot came out of that. It was interesting. It was cool that, again, I love that they let us participate in these things.
Absolutely. Thank you to the team for it. Yes.
I think
my bad attitude aside, it was very nice of them.
Yes. We're just bitterly sarcastic people, Steve. That's the problem.
Yeah,
you and
true.
Me are too old and too worn down to be optimists.
An hour-long hipster marketing briefing is not generally how I want to spend my time, but it was very nice of the Redskins or the Washington to invite us along. And again, I think that if you want some big picture summary points, number 1, the band is back. Number 2, you have a few more days for submission. Number 3, name submission. Number 3, it's going to take them about another year or so to go through some steps before they arrive at the end. That was the summary of it.
And I will say this, number 4, that might mean we have 2 more years of the Washington football team.
As I've said, from a legal perspective, it's very hard to get trademarks approved. It takes a year, generally speaking, even if there is no controversy, which there will be. Somebody will own this trademark unless they name it something crazy. Because, believe me, it's not just Macaulay. A bunch of other people have filed trademarks too. So it's not going to be like snap of the fingers. It might be even 2023, but maybe.
Yeah.
He didn't say that. That's just me saying it. That's not what Jason Wright said, but if they don't hurry.
You and me both reading some tea leaves there. Right. Yeah, and I think we're in agreement. Okay, so I don't think there's much else to talk about with this. Jamal, I know you weren't able to participate, nor do I think that trademark and, name change discussions is necessarily your thing. So I guess we should move on.
We're having some audio problems with Jamal. He was talking, but nothing was coming out of his mouth.
Yeah. All right. Jamal,
what about now? Can you guys?
Now we can hear you. There you are.
All right. Okay. All right. Just making sure. But yeah. I was talking this whole time. That's kind of crazy. But it's one of those things where it's like I'm not that invested into like the name change. There's things that I don't like. And the main thing that I don't like is Red Wolves. I don't think it makes sense at all in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I just don't know. But outside of that, like, I understand the process. I did the research, like when it initially dropped last summer. Like, it's going to take at close to 2 years to get everything finished. So it's like, all right, why the hell? Why the hell would I talk about this for the next 3 or 4 months? Like when it dropped, why would I talk about this for the next 3 or 4 months when we ain't even gonna know nothing until 2021, maybe the end of 2021? So I'm a very patient person in this aspect. I just had to understand what I was going to be going through.
Yep.
That's just what it is, man.
See, that's because you're smart, Jamal, and you understand and research things like process. But a lot of the fans, it's just not their thing, and they were excited, and I understand that, and very few people really understand what it takes to change a name. In terms of Red Wolves,
emotion.
I was not unhappy with Red Wolves too much, because you could keep the fight song, because it's 2 syllables and it kind of flows, and you could maybe change some lyrics and keep the fight song, and so that made me happy. I think
that's 90% of why people like it.
Yeah. I really just don't want to have to record my own version of a new different fight song. I want to keep what I already did.
Yeah. Well, we can always keep using that. I don't care.
Yeah. What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Send us a copyright strike?
If they stop using it, I don't think they can.
No, somebody still holds the copyright. It makes no difference
true.
if Washington doesn't use it anymore.
Yeah.
We're openly flaunting the law. It makes me feel good.
All right, well, let's move on to the other big thing that happened in the last few weeks that we didn't get to talk about last week. That is that Dan Snyder now owns 100% of the Washington football team.
No, that's not true.
Well,
the Snyder
owns,
family now owns 100% of the team.
His wife and his sister own 19%.
I think it's his mother and his sister, not his wife.
No, his wife definitely is one of them.
I don't think so. I think it's his mom.
I'm pretty sure it's Tanya.
Keep talking. Let's just summarize it by saying it is the Snyder family.
Snyder owns 81-ish, and they own 19-ish, whoever the other two folks are. The NFL owners okayed Dan going into debt by, I think, $450 million more. He had to pay close to $900 million. I believe it's $875 to buy out the Shar family and all these other folks. And the rumor is, when the story broke from the Times, or was it the New York Times or the New York Post? I think it was the New York Times.
The New York Times.
Yeah, when the New York Times broke it, they said that Snyder's just going to get a small fine or some kind of undisclosed fine for this whole Beth Wilkerson HR sexual harassment lawsuit thing. And he's not going to get suspended or anything. But we haven't really heard anything about that yet because, they haven't officially released the Beth Wilkerson report.
Okay, let me tell you guys something.
Yeah.
Okay, for all you people out there hoping and praying that something's going to come out of this Wilkinson report, it's not, okay?
Yeah.
Number one, Beth Wilkinson is just an investigator. Wilkinson's role is not to make recommendation as to application of NFL rules. Her job is to uncover the truth about what happened in the building. So I don't believe for a minute this report from the Junkies a couple weeks ago where she was recommending he be removed. They have a general counsel to do that. They have a whole office that applies, they can apply the NFL Constitution rules. I'm not buying that for a minute, number one. Number two, you don't go do something like borrow $450 million if there's a chance you're going to just lose the team, okay? In the NFL, I think what Chris and I, Larry and I finally figured out on the It's Just Business show is that a subcommittee has approved the debt limit exemption, and then the full ownership still has to vote on it. But the subcommittee isn't going to vote on something like that unless it's a done deal.
The full ownership did vote on it, I believe, this week.
Finally, you're right. Finally, this week. So you don't go through all that if there's a chance something's, you're going to lose a team. Okay. Right. This is a deal that was cut at very high levels, which every problem is resolved. The NFL said, look, you got to get rid of these people. I know you don't want to, but you got to pay them. That's the price you pay for solving your problems. And so he got assurances that all would be well. He paid off the owners. I'm assuming that the Indian lawsuit is going to go away.
I'm assuming all the lawsuits go away.
Right.
That's
what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And everybody is just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. And for those who, and I never had high hopes that this would mean some kind of ouster for Snyder.
I had zero hopes.
Yeah. I had maybe like a 1% chance, 5 at the highest, 5% chance that I thought it might happen. But
they would have had to have evidence of Dan Snyder personally doing something.
They would need like photos or video of him doing horrible things, I'd think.
Well, I mean, if you go back to the owner of the Carolina Panthers, whose name is escaping me right now, he got put out because there was decent corroborating testimony that he personally was being inappropriate in the office, and I think he used some racially insensitive names and words and stuff, but it was about him. None of this stuff is about Snyder personally, at least not directly. So that's why. Yeah,
so I think that's going to be the end of that. Unfortunately, I don't think Snyder gets any punishment if that's what you're rooting for.
Well, they might be a fine or something, but that doesn't matter.
I doubt we'll even hear what it is if it's just a fine.
Maybe not.
The one thing that did happen because of all this that is a punishment of sorts for the team, one of their major sponsors, which is Innova, who their name is on all the signage outside of not Redskins Park, whatever they call it, the Ashburn facility.
And it was down in Richmond too.
Down in Richmond too. They are the chief medical team that the football team has used for the last 5-10 years or something. Like all the surgeries are done at Innova, stuff like that. they are no longer going to be associated with the Washington football team. Why? Because, Inova happens to be either highly funded or owned by the Shar family, who just got bought out as, part of that lawsuit and settlement.
I mean, they'll find a new sponsor.
They will.
Hey, look, winning cures all. All this team has to do is start winning, and these problems, the problems with selling tickets, the problems with sponsors, nobody cares about what you do in professional sports if you win.
Sure.
Reference Ben Roethlisberger, for example. The man was accused of rape.
Right.
And
multiple
it all
times.
went away because he was a winner, right? Yeah. And so the NFL just shuffled it under the table. Deshaun Watson has now 21 women accusing him of inappropriate sexual behavior. Is the NFL doing anything about it? No, not yet. Why? Because he's a franchise quarterback. So look, if you win, your problems go away. If Washington and Ron Rivera can start winning on a regular basis, the sponsors will show up, the fans will show up, people will come back to podcasts and website. All of that will be okay. Nobody will care if they win.
No, I
cynically enough, but that's the truth.
I understand that. I just it's gonna be it's a little awkward when you're suing a guy who's also having to pay you, and now you're paying
and notice that Dan Snyder's paying more to buy 40% than he did to buy 60% in the first place.
True. That's true. Because he only they bought it for $800 million back when he first.
It was 800 and change, and it was more than 800.
And and only half of that's him, obviously. So
and I'll just point out that the $875 million that he's spending to buy the 40% comes out to a valuation of about $2.2 billion, which is low. It's not, So there was a deal cut here.
Right.
Because that's not really the value of the team, particularly when you throw the stadium in, and so he got a little bit of a bargain. Out of it.
The one other thought I've had with this is having that kind of debt that you're suddenly taking on. That could bite them down the road when it comes to the new stadium, because
Well, remember that they've paid down 25 years of debt.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have an enormous amount of debt. He may be back up to sort of where he started in the first place in terms of overall debt amount. Now the annual payments. Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah. But
that's what I was about to ask. Because I just wanted to know, so how much? Because I know they fronted him basically the money and he has to pay it back. But how long and how much is the annual?
Well, the debt service, it's hard to say. I'd have to do some math, but usually
these
kind of
loans would be.
Well, usually these kind of loans are 30-year terms. Okay.
Sure.
And so it's not an accident that the lease for the stadium was 30 years, because that is the security for the loan originally, right. Because you can't put up the team as security.
It's just like a home loan
and so
kind of thing.
The lending group would have required a 30-year term because that's the term of their loan. So my guess is that the original financing is probably going to be paid by 2027, is that the year, unless he's refied it again, which is possible. If he did that, then the payments are dramatically lower. So my guess in this is, from an annual payment basis, he's probably back up to where he started.
Sure.
That's probably, just as a big sort of nutshell, that's probably back up to where he started. It's a lot of money, there's no doubt, but I don't think he's paying dramatically more than he ever was. Annually on a debt.
They're never gonna. They don't let the public know that kind of stuff anyway. But we could guess on it. But yeah, I do have a mild concern. Is he gonna suddenly not have any money that he can put into a stadium down the road? With taking on all these debts and things.
No, look, those kind of things. Nobody pays cash for a stadium for real estate developments. It's just another loan, and the money will work out because you have projected ticket revenue, which will pay it, and a lease, and it'll all. That's not gonna have anything. He'll find a way to do the stadium. Trust me.
Yeah, you gotta hope so.
I know so.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's okay. So here's the breakout. It's before this purchase, Snyder had 40.4959%. His mother, Arlette, owned 6.5%, and his sister Michelle owned 12.55%. And so those are the three. It's not Tanya. It was his mother and his sister, and that's from Kime at ESPN.
Okay, I thought it was. I thought I saw Tanya's name was thrown in there, but all right.
No, because you don't want the wife who could theoretically divorce you at some point to end up with a big chunk of the team.
That's a fair point.
That probably his prenup, which I can promise you he has, probably deals with it.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure that he's got a prenup there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, for those who are hoping for, some other kind of outcome, I don't know what to tell you. This was never going to be a happy ending for you.
Get ready for Dan Snyder to own this team for the rest of your life.
Yep.
So the only thing everybody got now is just to hope we win, and make things less painful, and more enjoyable. Because when I heard this, I mean, it spoke a lot of things, obviously. You know that Dan ain't going nowhere. You also know that the NFL owners, they're looking out for themselves, I guess, in the most plain language type of thing. Like, it's in the NFL itself, they're looking out for themselves. They don't want to dip their hands in Dan Snyder's mess, and whatever he got going on in Washington. So they're just saving themselves by helping Dan out.
That's right.
That impacts the fan base. They don't really care about the fan base because they're worried about their own stuff, and that's just where we are. I don't like it, but it's nothing I can do about it. I am one person that not one of those owners know.
Yep.
Care about.
or care about. So I mean, it's just
even if they did know you, they probably still wouldn't care.
Exactly. They'll tell me to my face, Jamal, man, I like you, man. You're a cool guy. You're smart. You're probably the best friend I ever had. But guess what? I don't care who you root for. I need to save myself. I need to look out for myself. Right. And I'm going to let Dan do his thing and get 100% ownership.
Yeah, I mean, Jamal's very right. Because look, you don't become a billionaire unless your name is Walton and you've inherited billions. You don't become a billionaire by not stepping on and crushing a few souls along the way. These guys are ruthless businessmen. They're not interested so much in what the great unwashed think. They have their own problems. I can promise you, they all have skeletons in their closet.
Sure.
These type of battles going all the time at that level, and what they don't want is to sacrifice one of their own and have it come back on them.
Yeah, these are the kind of people that they'll murder their best friend for a big profit. Like that's how you become a billionaire. You don't do it. Generally speaking, through niceness.
That's right. And so they don't, Dan Snyder is not a well-liked owner. He's not an influential owner. He's not on any committees anybody cares about, but they don't want to sacrifice one of their own because that the next one up might be them.
Yep.
Put it this way. If you were an owner of any of the other 31 teams, would you ever, in your entire tenure of being an owner, would you ever thought, man, what about that other team's fan base?
No.
Zero.
You would never think about that. You only think about your own. You
even care about your own fan base all that much.
That's a high likelihood. Like, you probably don't even care about your own fan base.
You're
just worried about the way to get money. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you just want.
And before anybody, because I at least before I resigned from the hellscape that is Twitter, I used to see people get out there and say, hey, let's get a bunch of fans together and raise enough money to buy these teams. And I know people are being facetious about it, but just understand the NFL rules do not let that happen. You have to have one guy who's designated the owner who invests a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So you can't have this crowd-funded, owned NFL football team. That is against the rules, so just forget it.
Yeah. So, before we get into...
They probably looked after the Packers model.
Well, the Packers model is a residual from days gone by. And let me tell you that about the Packers, the stock that the public owns is totally worthless. Okay. Yeah. You have no voting rights. You have no rights to dividends, and you can't trade them. It is as close as, I was going to say something political, but I won't because we're a sports show. It is as close as you can get to literally printing money. It's like when the Packers need to raise some money, they print some stock certificates that have essentially no value except as something people can hang on their wall. Mm-hmm. And you pay them a couple $100. It's almost literally printing money. It is not truly a a public-owned entity. It's a small group of people that control and run the Packers.
Right. Well, so before we move into safeties and corners in the draft, which I know we got to get to, I do want to bring up something I just saw tweeted, and I know I saw it mentioned yesterday. It's come out that Brandon Scherf, he's on the franchise tag. Apparently, when Washington offered him a deal earlier this year, it would have made him the highest paid guard, a multi-year deal being the highest paid guard, and he still turned that down. So
I wouldn't read too much into that.
You don't think so?
No. Deadlines have a way of making people negotiate. Trust me, I've sat through a lot of negotiations. And when you're that early in the process, deals tend to not happen. You got to wait until the July 15, whatever the day is in July that the franchise tag negotiation window ends.
Closes.
It's in July. Yeah, that's when a deal is going to be struck. I think if you were sure, if you could maybe have an argument to say that if I wait this out a year, there's going to be more money available next year, because of the salary cap issues.
Sure.
That may be some part of it. But if Washington's not going to make their highest and best deal until the window is almost closed, so I don't read too much into that.
Okay, I just thought I'd bring that up. But
it's interesting, but I don't think it means a lot.
Well, I think it's interesting that they, offered him, here's all the money, and he still said,
Well, that doesn't necessarily mean just because they offered him the biggest contract doesn't mean it's market value, remember, because the biggest guard contract is still Zach Martin, and that was several years ago. And so I wrote a piece on this. If you want to know what's really going to cost, read my piece that I wrote, I don't know, 3 weeks ago maybe. It's going to be $18 million a year. Just to summarize it, it's going to be that much.
Yep. All right, guys, why don't we move on, though, and talk about position groups in the draft. Steve, you wrote about corners 2 weeks ago. Let's start there because I think corners better position group to cover, even though it might not be the biggest need.
Yeah, we didn't get around to this last week because we had a busy show. So we're going to cover two draft groups. We're going to cover corners and safeties. So corners is a pretty good group here. I'm not going to drone on for 20 minutes about it. I'll let you guys comment. But the consensus number one corner in the draft is Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech. A lot of Washington fans know him because he played in this area. He's the consensus number one. He's got it all. 6'2", almost 200 pounds. He's running, a 40 and, around 4.5 or less. You can't always trust these pro day 40 times.
Not now. They have linemen running 4.4s in some of these pro
But you got to think of Farley as a low 4.5, high 4.4 kind of category. His negative, I think, is his injury history. He's had a non-contact knee injury, which is always bad. He had back spasms. But he's the number one. Patrick Surtain, who's the son of NFL corner Patrick Surtain Sr. from many years ago, is the consensus number two. Surtain's another guy who has all 6'1", 200 pounds.
Yeah. These guys are getting bigger.
He ran an unofficial 4.46. He's from Alabama. He ran a 4.46 at his pro day. Again, if you sort of round up, he's another guy in the 4.45 category. There's a minority of people had him ranked higher than Farley. So it's those two guys are first rounders without a doubt. And it doesn't hurt that Surtain has got his dad's name. And so, a lot of scouts will give him bonus points for that. Yeah. The number three guy universally is going to be J.C. Horn, who's another son of an NFLer, Joe Horn. If you remember him, he was a receiver with the Saints, among others.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize he was Joe Horn's son.
Yeah, he's Joe Horn's son. He's a true junior, with South Carolina. Another guy, 6'1", 205, classic size. He's a burner. Ran a 4.39 at his pro day. Again, round up, so that probably means he's mid 4.5, mid 4.4s realistically, but a burner. He's a zone and press man guy, so he's, I think, a little bit more limited into the defenses in which he's going to excel. He's not an off man cover guy. So that's Horn. Greg Newsome from Northwestern's another one, 6'1", 190.
Not the son of any other famous players there?
No, he's not the son of anybody. He's ranked a little bit lower. He's a little leaner, but he does have speed. he's had durability and problems, and Northwestern didn't play him a lot of games last year, so he's ranked a little lower. Those are the top guys. Asante, well, tell you what, I'll get to the other ones here in a minute because I've got a list of about 6 more. Sure. But any thoughts as to the top group of corners?
I wouldn't. Well, not individually, but I will say like as a group. Actually, 2 things. But the first thing is I wouldn't be upset if they decided to take any of them in the first 2 rounds. But I think the evaluation part comes into. I know we're talking about draft, but Daryl Roberts, the guy that they just signed, from what I understand, I wish I could give the proper credit to the person where I heard this from. It was somebody credible, but I just don't remember. They were mentioning that they were considering, based on Rivera's press conference, I believe, that he may actually be like the slot guy for Washington. And I say that to say you got 2 outside guys in Kendall and Jackson. And then you have Daryl Roberts, who we felt as a fan base, and some reporters, beat reporters, felt like he was going to be the spot depth guy. Obviously you can always upgrade, but the question would be, where are you putting these guys that you may draft? Because some of those guys like Surtain, he's not just playing in the slot. He's playing outside. So it's like, where exactly are you going to put these guys, and how's the rotation going to work out? Obviously, we're going to assume that if you were to get anybody in the first 2 rounds, and it happens to be the names that you mentioned, we're going to assume that they're already better than Roberts. Roberts is that backup guy. But how is it going to mesh, and how is it going to work with these guys? Are you going to just put Kendall back in the slot? Like, what's going to happen?
I mean, that's what I would do. Personally,
it's a valid question, Jamal, and I think Kendall's probably better in the slot, regardless. If you forget about how much money they're paying him, he's making a lot of money. So I don't think they're going to draft a corner in the round 1 or 2, personally. But if they do, it's a legitimate question to ask. And like you said, like a guy like Surtain, or if they somehow grab Farley, which they won't be able to, but if they did, you're not going to put him in the slot.
Yeah,
you're not.
I'll put it this way: we're at 19. If that first 18 picks doesn't break very well for Washington, and you're like, all your top tackles and linebackers and all the elite tight ends and all these guys are off the board, but there hasn't been a run on corners, and suddenly one of these top 2 or 3 guys is still there, that might be your pick just because it's the best guy left. Maybe. And, corner is a position where you can be 4 deep at corner, and that's not a bad thing.
Washington historically drafts a lot of corners compared to other teams.
We do draft a lot of corners there, especially early, and it's historically been a good position of strength for Washington.
Let me go over some more names here. Eric Stokes is probably next up, 6'1", 185 from Georgia. Mm-hmm. Another guy, burner. He's the fastest one in the class. He was timed at 4.24 seconds, which, again, you got to round up from these things, but still, he's probably the fastest corner in this group. He's one of the fastest players in the country, period, this year. He's a zone guy more than anything. So he's probably a 2nd-round guy. The other one with a big name that everybody recognizes is Ahsante Samuel Jr. Right. Obviously, his father was Ahsante Samuel Sr., who was a first-team All-Pro. What was he with the Eagles and some other teams?
Yeah, he was with a couple teams, but he was a star for a while.
Yeah. His deal is he's small. He's a little small, 5'10", 184, and he's got good speed, but he's not a burner like these other guys. So Samuel's ranked a little lower, but he's another one that because of his name, he may get some more draft cred. But that's a name at Florida State. Watch out for him. I'm going to butcher this next name, so forgive me. I'm going to say Ifeatu Melifonwu, if that's right, from Syracuse, 6'2", 212. Forgive me about the name. He's a bit of a mystery to me because a lot of analysts thought he was a little bit lower, but a couple people had him ranked as a 2nd-rounder. He's more of a press man guy, I think, or more of a zone guy rather than a press man guy. Stanford, Paulson Adebo is another one who's highly thought of. Some more names: Aaron Robinson, Elijah Molden, I think that's the group of about 10 or so who are the well-known corners. It wouldn't surprise me to see Washington grab one of them, but I think personally it'll be maybe mid-rounds unless, like Alex said, they just have no choice because somebody falls to them.
Yeah, someone falls and you just don't love your other options.
Right.
And that happens. I wouldn't be upset if that's where we're at.
No, me neither. So that's corners in a nutshell. I mean, I think Jamal is right to bring up who's going to play where, and I personally think, and I've always thought it's a mistake to put Kendall Fuller as an outside corner. So I think they could use a highly rated outside corner, outside big time number one corner to go opposite of William Jackson. And then if you do that and you have Kendall in his rightful place, then you've got, then we transition to free safeties, find a free safety, and then all of a sudden you've got an outstanding defensive backfield.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's going to be tough. I look at, the situation with Fuller is one thing, and then there's the other situation of, are we going more towards a man-to-man scheme or a zone scheme? Because,
unknown.
That's an unknown. And I know you're going to play a mix of both, but, we talked about it. Jackson's going to be best man-to-man. That's what you want him to do. And you could maybe have him doing that while other people are doing a zone, do kind of a combo thing.
I mean, no team's going to play man all the time.
No,
you have to play a combination of both.
It's not the 1920s.
And unless you're Greg Williams, you're not going to run a ton of cover zeros unless your name is Greg Williams. So, I mean, Jackson's going to have to play some zone at some point in time, no matter where he went.
Of course. And I'm sure he, did previously anyway. It's not like it's going to be
it's not like he's incapable of it. It's just we know that his talent lies more in press man.
Right.
He's an talented NFL corner. He'll get by.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure he'll be fine. Well, you mentioned they need a free safety too, and I also wrote a thing about the safeties in the draft. You can read it on the site. Let me just summarize this safety class as this ain't a great safety class this year. Really, there's only one guy who's projected to go in the first round. That's the kid out of TCU, Javon Mooring. I'm not really even sure. He's got like a silent H in the middle of his name. But he's a strong safety. He's probably, he's not Landon Collins level like in the box safety, but he's definitely more of a strong safety than a free safety. So I don't think getting him would make a lot of sense if he's there in the first round. There is a kid from Oregon, Holland, who he's a bit more of a free safety, not as much of a spectacular big play guy. Good man-on-man skills, though, for a safety. Like, he's really good at sticking to a guy. He makes a lot of picks that way just by playing some tight coverage as a safety. But I know that's a little weird because, safeties, you think of them more as zone guys. So you'd have to kind of figure out how to utilize him, from what I saw. There was another it's a very strong safety-heavy class because the kid from Florida State...
Try to pronounce his name. I had to pronounce the other guy's name. Take a shot at it.
Nasir Al-Din, which is, I think, an episode or one of the villains in The Hobbit. Nasir Al-Din,
Oh, wow.
I'm sure he would not appreciate that reference.
It's a tough name to pronounce, and it's a funny joke because I think it's actually close to. But again, strong safety, and he is more of an in-the-box guy. Like, you're definitely not getting him. Cisco from Syracuse, same thing. Clearly strong safety. And by the way, everyone after the guy from TCU right now, we're talking second, third round picks at best. Most of these guys are even going to be day 3 picks. Paris Ford, who fun to watch. When I was watching his tape, he kind of stands out as like a very high energy, fun player. Had a terrible pro day. He ran a 4.940. Still clearly with that speed. Probably not a free safety.
I could have beat him.
Yeah. At
some point. My goodness.
In your prime, when you were like
I could have beat him.
Back when you were in college, definitely.
Yeah.
You have the other kid from TCU, Darius Washington. He is probably too small to be relied on. He's 5'8", 179.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's pretty tiny for a safety.
Yeah, that is tiny for a safety. I would actually say, though, his skill set probably closely fits what they need in terms of a guy who can be like a center field, drops back, can cover, sideline to sideline. Because he's small, but he's fast. I would just worry about that size going against, running backs or tight ends.
A guy like that is not going to be a starter.
No.
Not at 5'8".
He could play special teams and maybe have a role.
Danny Johnson, is about that size, and there's a reason why they want to keep him around because he's a talented player and he's a good special teamer, but you just can't start the guy who's 5'9". Unless you're Darryl Green, who's a Hall of Fame talent.
Yeah, so I want to get to the two guys, really, who I thought, from what I was able to watch of them, they might be able to kind of slip in, day 3 and maybe fill that free safety role. One was Richard LeCounte, the kid out of Georgia, and the other is Damar Hamlin, also out of Pittsburgh. He played the opposite of Paris Ford. Ford is the guy you watch for the excitement, but Hamlin was the guy who was always dropping back and, playing that cleanup role, which is what I think you really want in a free safety. So not a spectacular player, not exciting, but, if he's playing the role right, maybe that's what you need.
Do you not think that Javon Holland could be a good option for Washington in round 2, perhaps?
If he's there in round 2, I think he would probably be the best option. I just don't know if he'll be there when they're picking. But yeah, he would be good free, because I think he plays true free safety, not this strong free hybrid that a lot of guys are doing or in the box.
Washington does have a safety problem. They really do. I mean, they've got a bunch of strong safeties. Troy Apke's really the only true free safety, and he's not a starting quality player.
No.
They've got to deconflict somehow Cameron Curl and Landon Collins, and the answer is going to be Landon's out of luck in one way, shape, or fashion. And then these other guys like DeShazer Everett, again, high energy player. They like him. Special teams ace.
Here's one thing I'll say about Everett. I think Everett is not a single high free safety, but I think he can kind of, like they did this with him and Curl before he got hurt.
Yeah.
Where they both played, half
field. But it's not ideal. Well, and that's cover 2, but do you want DeShazer Everett as a cover 3 free safety? Probably not. And then they've got a couple practice squad guys. So they really do need desperately to find a starting quality free safety one way, shape, or fashion.
And I know they're not in vogue. That's the weird thing. Like these rangy, free safeties whose job is just to kind of cover the whole back of the field. They're not popular in the league anymore, which is weird because you need them.
Teams play a lot of cover 3.
Yeah.
Certain defenses do, and those teams can use a guy like that. Washington was principally a cover 3 team last year.
Right.
Principally. So Washington needs a guy like this.
Yeah, they really do. So
my question for you all, based on, because obviously you all did the cornerbacks and the safeties, what if there was a secondary person taken in the first round? Based on you all's analysis of each unit, who are you taking if there had to be one from your position? Who are you taking in the first round?
At 19 for corners?
Yeah.
I don't think Caleb Farley is going to be available, going to be an option. He's going to get drafted too high. Same with Surtain. I think Surtain, both those two guys are maybe top 15. And so I think the only real option for that would probably be J.C. Horn by default. I don't think any of these other guys are first-round talents. Newsome, somebody may grab Ahsante Samuel because of his name, but I don't think he's a true number 1 outside corner. So to me, by default, it would probably be J.C. Horn.
And I honestly don't think any of these safeties would merit that first-round pick. Like I said, the one guy who's going to be a first-rounder is clearly more of a strong safety, which we don't need. And that's Trevon Mourning. So I don't
guess
really
fair would be top 2 rounds. Then I guess I should.
Yeah, I think Steve kind of pointed to it earlier that Holland from Oregon would be a good top 2 round free safety.
There's a chance a guy like that's going to be there at 19 in round 2.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a chance. If they were there would definitely be a chance if they traded back in that first round, which I don't think they'll do, but if they did trade back and pick up like an extra second round pick somewhere,
yeah,
I could see that making some sense too.
I mean, in terms of round 2 for corners, none of those top 3 are going to be available when Washington picks in round 2. I mean, J.C. Horn is too big of a name; he's not going to be there. So you could grab in the second round. You could grab maybe Newsome.
Yeah,
Greg Newsome from Northwestern.
Samuel,
he might be available,
like you said.
Maybe. I just think Samuel's a name, and so one of these scouts is going to remember his dad and grab him early. You know, I don't think Samuel's going to be there. And again, I think Samuel, because of his size, is going to end up being a slot guy anyway, probably. So,
it's crazy how many legacy corners there are. Guys who father played in the league this year.
I mean, you get the genetics of your dad. It's
not
that surprising.
I get it, but it just seems wild that there are, 4 guys there?
Well, yeah, Horn, of course, was a receiver.
Yeah, but still.
If you make me pick a round 2 guy, I'd pick Greg Newsome.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good corner class overall. It's just not a good safety class. It really isn't.
I mean, if we can, we'll do our position group breakdown later, in weeks to come on this. But if you can sort of think big picture, long term here, what's going on in the defensive backfield? William Jackson, Kendall Fuller, long term guys. Cam Curl, long term guys. Those are your starters for the long haul that Washington has. And so what they really need to do is find one more corner and a free safety that are starting quality. That's the big picture here. Whether they can do it in this draft, I mean, we've talked about it. We'll see. But I think none of the rest of these guys are starters. Like Greg Stroman, Demi Moreland, we like them. Great guys. They play a role. They're not really starters. And if you hit on one of these lottery picks like DeMarcus Aceyam, who knows? Yeah. I mean, in Darryl Roberts, I don't think is going to be, at least he doesn't project out to be a long-term starter. He's filling a role, So I think that's the big picture for the defensive backfield.
I mean, I think that you could pick one of these guys who I had mentioned later, like Hamlin, and if you get him somehow in like maybe the 5th round, just throwing a round out there, he could work out. I think that's kind of what you got to do is you get somebody like that, you see some skills you like, and you coach them up, because that's what they did with Curl, and it worked. They got lucky there in a way. I think they picked him thinking he'd be good special teamers. I don't think they thought Curl was going to be, the stud that he became, and people are now saying he should have been picked in the 1st round. So,
well, I mean, that's easy to say now, but
yeah, but you know what I mean.
Sometimes guys just outplay their draft status.
Yeah.
Tommy Brady, little Tommy, is obviously the gold standard of that.
Alfredo Morris,
Joe Jacoby. Joe Jacoby.
Alfredo Morris.
Yeah. Well, Jacoby was back in the day when dudes got drafted all over the place, and I mean, Steve Young and Joe Montana were like 4th round picks.
But point is, there's guys like that, and it happens. Sometimes you draft Josh Doxson. And sometimes you get a Cameron Curl.
Yeah, exactly. I'll take a Cameron Curl over Josh Doxson any day.
Jamal, I wanted to ask you, I don't think we really covered running backs last week either. You wrote your running back piece last week. I wanted to hear what you thought about the running back group, if you can remember off the top of your head.
Shoot, that's crazy. I mean, I can remember some. I know that a lot of the guys that I did look at, if you give me like 2 seconds, I can actually bring it up. But the guys that I did look at.
Why don't you bring it up? Steve and I can pad.
Well, because I mean, while Jamal's looking it up, to me, Washington has a need for a power rusher.
They do.
Antonio Gibson is not a power rusher.
No.
Peyton Barber, we've talked about him, a yard in a cloud of dust. So I think they could use a guy who's like a power rusher and not a slasher. And so that's what I would look for in the draft. I mean, if like a guy like Najee Harris falls to you, or Travis Etienne, I mean, maybe you have to grab him. But the real question would be sort of like mid-rounds, who would be like the traditional power back.
Right, and I do know, at least when I looked at running backs, I saw a lot of small guys. I didn't, look at any tape or anything of any of these guys, but it looked like a lot of guys with a 1 in the first digit of their, weight. Which I that's not what we need.
Yeah. So I guess the guys for me, all of them are going to be somewhere in the mid rounds. Not it mid to late rounds. Excuse me. But yeah, I think I agree with you all, but I also feel like you don't need that power back. You don't need it. So you have to evaluate the options and what's best for your offense. And with that being said, it could be a power back, but they have to do something more than just being able to put their head down and get your 2 yards. I mean, obviously, clearly, that's what Peyton Barber was for. And I don't think he, in the grand scheme of things, personally don't think anybody who's averaging under 3 yards a carry on a season with the amount of carries that he's gotten is a successful running back in any NFL standard. I don't think that's good at all. With that being said, the guys that I looked at, I think there was 5. Yeah, 5. Yeah. And what serves what you all are looking for is the guy in Kylan Hill, but also Jared Patterson from Buffalo. Kylan Hill is from Mississippi State, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Jared Patterson is from Buffalo. Both of those guys present that strong build and tough running back. They can get you the needed yards. But at the same time, these guys are a little shifty. Well, excuse me. Hill is shiftier in open space, while Patterson is just the bowling ball that you guys are looking for, who can get you the tough yards, but also he's already a low compact guy, in the sense of, even though he's not as shifty as a Kylan Hill would be, Patterson is already a tough tackle. He's 5'9", but he's also 195. He's pushing that 200. He may even be 200, to bulk up when he gets to the NFL. He may be that 200-pound guy, but he's 5'9", and it reminds you of the guys like who was it? I guess why am I forgetting? Maurice Jones-Drew. I'm talking about in terms of build. Maurice Jones-Drew, Jacquizz Rodgers, those type of guys. That's what you're looking at when you look at Jared Patterson. And those are the people that I relate to the most in terms of those guys being difficult to tackle. I like that type of style. I would be 100% fine if they went the Jared Patterson route. There's also 4 other backs, like I said, one being Kylan Hill, but there's also other options, a variety in which they're not all power backs that they can look at. They can implement them in the offense and become a spell back. And spell backs of any kind is good as long as they present value to the offense and not like a one predictable type of guy. And I think that's what's best for this offense.
What about I think the name everybody knows is Hubbard from Oklahoma State. Is it Chuba? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, Chuba.
Yeah, I mean, he's a name that everybody knows. What do you think of him?
I think it's just because his name is Chuba Hubbard.
Well, I mean, he was kind of a high-profile player, in college.
And it's
football.
a hard name to forget. But yeah, Steve was exactly right. He was a high-profile guy.
He is.
Because of his production, he was a very productive back at his time at Oklahoma State. I'm looking at it now. He finished his career with 3,400 yards, 33 touchdowns. In 2019, I think he got hurt in 2020. I don't remember exactly, but in 2019, he led the NCAA in all-purpose yards. This is a guy, like I said, when I mentioned versatility earlier, and somebody who's not just that one route type of guy, Chuba is a guy who can solve your return problems as well. He's a kick returner, and he can play out of the backfield. So I think Chuba is, for his worth, he's going to be one of those guys where I said these are all mid-round prospects, but he's going to be one of those guys who's on the higher end of the 3rd round. So if you're going to go for a running back early, that's probably one of the guys, and even second, because he's that talented. So somebody may be all right, we can get him at the end of the second, late second, 25th pick and later. He's that type of good. But I don't think there's the only 2 first-round running backs is the ones that Steve mentioned, that I think is worth that's going to be up there. But at the same time, Hubbard is one of those guys who's not that far behind, but he's going to be that second fringe third type of thing. So I really like Hubbard. and he provides multiple different ways to be utilized. And I will be all for it again. Like there's just certain styles that will mesh well with this team.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like from a draft perspective, his destiny may not be DC, just from where he's going to be drafted perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But at the same time, I think what we're talking about in general, the running back position, it's not a need, but it is like one of those where it's like you can never have enough, because like the back end, like the way they use running backs in this offense, the back end is just as important as the front end. You got to find somebody who can work in and get the job done for those 7 to 10 touches a game on offense. And if they can contribute on special teams, that's even better. But on offense, you need somebody who can get those 7 to 10 and maximize every single touch that they get.
And that's not Peyton Barber. They need to find a better.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, I know we signed the guy who used to be the starter for Houston, but he's 30.
Lamar Miller.
Yeah, he's been out for 2 years.
Yeah. And the other guy is Bryce Love, but he's a lottery pick at this point, with his knee.
I will say on Patterson, he stands out to me, Jamal, just because I remember him having 2 games back-to-back where he ran for 300 and 400 yards 2 seasons ago. And it's ridiculous that anyone was able to run.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I know it's Buffalo and he was playing in the MAC, but
I think only friend of the show, O.J. Simpson, has done something like that.
I didn't see that one coming.
And also out of Buffalo.
Yeah, that's true. Friend of Buffalo. By the way, we'd be remiss in not mentioning that Washington signed a player this week. Deandre Carter, he's a receiver, but he's really a punt returner.
Right.
And so, Carter's he's not the second coming of Tyreek Hill or anything, but he's got some decent punt return numbers. His career average is 9.3 yards per return. Average. Well, that's a heck of a lot better than anybody from Washington's ever done, in years. So he's probably your leading contender for punt returner next season is DeAndre Carter. And the other thing is, real quick, salary cap wise, we got some more numbers. We got Adam Humphrey's number. His cap hits small. And so what we're looking at, right, and I'm missing a few contracts, and so I'm missing, I think, 4 of them, but they're all small. So we're looking at somewhere in the $10 million range in terms of free space once you add the rookie pool to it. And once you do the subtract out the rule of 51 for the guys we don't know and add the rookie pool, it's somewhere in the $10 million range for free space.
All right. Well, that is that's kind of a limit where they can, maybe get 1 or 2 small players, medium-sized players, contracts in there. But it sounds like we're probably done with the big moves at this point because you can't make a big move at $10 million.
Well, also, who's left?
Yeah. Well, if somebody falls like Deshaun Jackson did a few years ago, or Josh Norman.
Maybe if they want to make a big move at quarterback, we'll inherit Mr. I have a fetish for massage parlors.
I would avoid that at all costs right now.
I had the great pleasure of reading all of the petitions against him for IJB, and let me tell you something. The dude is sick. I mean, a lot of the details from his cases have not been reported on the news because they're going to get in trouble with the FCC if they talk about it. But there's a whole bunch of butt stuff in these things that the media could not mention. That he's asking massage. What are they called? Massage professionals, masseuses to really engage in his inner butt, and it's just gross. He's sick.
That is weird.
Yeah,
that is super. I only read the one on SI that went public, and it was creepy.
Yeah, I read that.
And they're more creepy once you read them. They're more creepy. Yeah. Believe me. He's got a fetish.
It sounds like he's got some things going on.
His attorney made a mistake. I'm Rusty Hardin, which is uncharacteristic. He's probably the best criminal attorney in the state of Texas. And
I was going to say, you probably don't know him, but you run in the legal circles.
I know him a little bit. I've met him and talked to him a couple of times.
Oh, okay.
I'm not on his Christmas card list or anything, but he got 18 more masseuses to go get out and support Watson. But all that did is prove that in the past year, he's engaged with 40 separate women to get massages in about a year, and some of them had multiple appointments. So what Rusty inadvertently proves is that Deshaun Watson goes to random masseuses multiple times a week, every week.
Mm-hmm. By the way, that's not what people do. I know.
By the way, the fact that 18 of them have not accused him of problems does not mean he didn't do bad things with the others.
Of course not. It's like saying, well, I didn't kill him. He's alive.
Kind of, yeah. It just proved that he's got a thing for massages.
No, I mean, like, I know a lot of people who get massages. You don't go to, like, different people. Like, you have your person.
The Texans could provide him with whatever they needed.
That too. Except for what he needed, they would not.
Well, except what he wanted.
Yeah.
What he needed is not what he wanted.
Yeah. Well.
But trust me, they're grosser than what the media has reported. Is what I'm trying to say.
That's. I might listen to IJB and catch up on all the gross.
I didn't even go into that. I was trying to keep it PG-13 on that one too.
All right.
I'll tell you guys off the air.
Okay. All right, guys. Steve is going to tell some gross stuff off the air, and we will be back next week. Until then, enjoy your week.